I have taught the book of Revelation for longer than I care to admit. And I usually spend about 40 days on it, 40 to 42 days talking about the book of Revelation. And so I don't want to assume things. So if I say something and you're not quite tracking, or you think that I have not made my case clear, please stop me anytime during the presentation. If you want to stop me, ask a question. I know that I have a tendency to overplan. I have 90 slides that I have for the presentation. That means we have to move it one a minute or we're in big trouble. And we may not finish that, and to be honest, that's okay, as long as the time is worthwhile. If it's not, then it's not okay. For those of you who really like to want to have a copy of information, I don't want you madly taking notes. If anything is on the screen, you'll be able to access it after this presentation is over. I've arranged to have it put on the website so that you can grab the PowerPoint slides and use them. And hopefully I have documented the location of anything that's either a quote or a picture, with the exception of a picture of Luther, because it's been hanging in my study for over 30 years, and it was hanging in my father's study for probably about 50 years before that. And as far as I can tell, it is past the right of charging royalties for it. I think it's in public domain now. I actually looked it up because my son wanted a copy of the picture, and so that should be in public domain. So I think we're all legal if you have if I can distribute the presentation. If it's not on the slide and you want something, please use the back of the handout that I gave you to take any notes that you wish to. And if you don't, you don't. I don't know how to feel about this. This is 4:30. I'm going to talk for an hour and a half. And I'm going to guess some of you are going to get hungry between now and then.
It'll keep us awake.
It'll keep you awake. That'll keep you awake. Okay. So let's get started. Any slide that goes back in time to Luther's time will have Luther's picture. This was from an artist in Budapest from quite a while ago who drew that picture of Luther holding on to the book of God's Word, because that's really what gave him confidence and strength. And my first introduction in the ministry, probably to a Luther quote, is, although I've served as a teacher ever since I left the seminary, I've also served as pulpit assistant to a couple congregations. And the first, I guess we did start too early.
I couldn't find it, sorry.
That's all right. You're welcome to come in. Oh, by the way, since I started right on time, if I'm talking and you notice it's 6 o'clock and time to end, just go like that a couple times. I'll get the message sooner or later than I can over. But one of the first times, as far as in a pastoral setting, I ran across Luther's words, and I didn't know they were Luther's words at the time. Is hanging in a sacristy where I was pulpit assistant, and I was waiting because it was customary if you were doing the preaching, the liturgist would be out in the sanctuary, but the preacher would tend to wait back. And I looked on the wall, and I saw this. It's called Luther's Sacristy Prayer, although he didn't write it as a sacristy prayer. He was writing a book about the book of Genesis, and he was commenting about church leaders. And he said this, and I'm going to read through it both to hear the words, but also as a prayer for me. It says, above all, a ruler in the church should pray in this manner. O Lord, thou hast appointed me in the church as bishop and pastor. Thou seest how unfit I am to attend to such a great and difficult office. And if it had not been for thy help, I would long since have ruined everything. Therefore I call upon thee. Of course, I want to put my mouth and heart to use. I shall teach the people, and I myself shall learn, and shall meditate diligently on thy word. Use me as thy instrument. Only do not forsake me, for if I am alone, I shall easily destroy everything. And as we take a look at the book of Revelation, I kind of feel in the same situation is, if I start talking and I am not grounded in what God has to say, you can draw all sorts of faulty conclusions from the book of Revelation. We're starting with the book of Revelation because for hundreds of years since the Reformation, on Reformation Sunday, the historical reading is Revelation chapter 14. And it says, then I saw another angel flying in midair, and he had the everlasting, or the eternal, gospel to proclaim to those who live on the earth, to every nation, tribe, language, and people. And he said in a loud voice, fear God, and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and the springs of water. And obviously people immediately connected with Luther because Luther had that everlasting gospel. He proclaimed it to anybody who could get his hands on. His message went throughout all of Europe, and think of you Lutherans all over the world today. He wanted to share that message. And you almost, at least when I read this, and I don't want to read anything in the scripture, but when you're talking about Luther, how do all his meanings for the commandments start? We're going to do a little participation occasionally, just to make sure you're still alive. What does this mean?
We should fear and love God.
Okay, that we do something, okay? So, fear God, and how do you give him glory? By doing what he says. If you're a parent, right, how do your kids give you glory is by listening to what you said. Right? How do you if your sons and daughters, how do you give glory to your parents? Is obeying them and listening to them. And you almost have that setup here. Now, Luther had a good understanding of where he stood with the Word. From the beginning of the Reformation, I have asked God to send me neither dreams, nor visions, nor angels, but to give me the right understanding of His Word, the Holy Scriptures. For as long as I have God's Word, I know that I'm walking in His way, and that I shall not fall into any error or delusion. And I think that's a good prayer for you to use for the rest of your life, or a good thought to always have in your mind, is pray that God doesn't give you a miracle. By the way, does anybody here pray for a miracle? When I was your age, actually, I was more inclined to do it. I have to confess, it's been a while since I prayed for a miracle, because as I look at the Bible, anytime God gives a miracle, He usually asks for something really big. And I don't know if I'm getting to be a coward in my old age, but God does take human beings and accomplish great things, but He puts them kind of in a pressure cooker sometimes. And occasionally He will give a miracle to let you know what's coming. I'm still going to be with you during that. And as Luther read this, he said, had I followed the enthusiasts and their many dreams and visions, I would have to change my doctrine more than 30 or 40 times. And when we're looking at the book of Revelation, I think it is easy to say, I look at it as a giant dream that John had, and you start making up stuff. The person who taught me the book of Revelation was my father. And obviously I'm prejudiced. I love my dad. My dad knew the book of the Bible better than anybody else I had ever run into. I would sit when he was a little kid and we'd go to his preaching, and I'd sit in the back and I'd grab his Bible because he was driving, so I couldn't be reading the Bible at the time, and I'd open up the Bible and I'd read a single verse to him. And then he'd proceed to tell me what book I had just read from, what chapter it was, and usually what verse and where it was on the page. He had the same Bible his whole life. Actually, he had two copies of the Bible. He had one that when he sent out to be not reprinted, but rebound. And he used the same Bible for his whole life. And he had this feel of where things are. It's kind of like you guys have an idea of where things are after you work with them for a while. Even if you didn't try to memorize stuff, you know where things are. It's kind of like if mom's working in the kitchen. I don't know if any of you have this problem. Moms always know where everything in the kitchen is. And I don't. And, I ask, well, where is this? Or we're drying the dishes. Where do I put this away? You'd think I would know, but I don't. My wife does all of the cooking. And so she knows where everything is. And when you use it regularly, you get a feel for where things are. And I think that one of the reasons that I've grown to love the book of Revelation is because somebody who had read the first 65 books of the Bible and knew them very well was able to open them up. And then that's the problem with Revelation is that, and my dad remarked once, is that when he came into the ministry, he was told, you probably should never preach on a text in Revelation until you've been in the ministry for 10 to 20 years. And he said, in one sense, that's good advice. You've got to know the rest of the Bible to know what's going on in Revelation. It's kind of like watching the end of a movie. You don't quite figure out things if you haven't watched the rest of the movie. So I'm going to try as much as possible. I'm not going to put anybody on the spot and say, have you read all 65 books of the Bible? But it certainly helps with Revelation. All right. Now, we're going to return to Wittenberg. It makes us think about, say, Luther and what was going on back then. And I do not want to take away from how God uses personalities. I thought I'd give you this quote from Luther about where he saw he was and where Philip Melanchthon was in the Reformation. For this I was born, to fight and to take the field against mobs and devils. Therefore, many of my books are stormy and warlike. I must pull out the stumps and roots, hack away at the thorns and thistles, drain the swamps. I am the coarse woodsman who must blaze a new trail. But Master Philip comes neatly and quietly behind me, cultivates and plants, sows and waters with joy, according to the gifts that God has richly given him. Everybody in this room has a different set of gifts. Some of you guys were all quiet when you came in here, but I'm going to guess some of you do talk. Okay? And some of you are more extroverted and some of you are more introverted, and God uses all sorts of talents and abilities. But one of the things I'd like to stress is the Word of God that ultimately accomplishes a goal for us. This is an introduction in Luther's works to a sermon Luther wrote. And I'm going to skip the introduction. Let's get to the sermon itself. This took place when Luther returned to Wittenberg after he had been away at the Wartburg. And remember, what was life like in Wittenberg when Luther was gone? Revolts, mobs, monks and nuns getting beaten up, people smashing stuff, we don't need this anymore, and just a very kind of a violent situation. Luther came back, and you know what he did? They got the dramatic scene in the last Luther movie. They had the scene in the previous Luther movie. They always got that scene in the movie. He basically stares down Karlstadt, kicks him out of town, and that's it. Actually, what he did, he came back to town and he preached for 8 days straight. Sunday, Monday, he just preached for a whole week straight. And the mob situation in Wittenberg turned into a very peaceful situation. And this was the summary I was going to get. The remarkable series of these sermons, which are powerful, inspired preaching of the gospel, had the effect of restoring tranquility and order almost at once. This is what he said, which I think is important for all of us, because I think everybody in this room wants to make a difference in this world. I think you want to have the gospel of Jesus Christ. I think you want to bring people to faith. I think you want to encourage people in the faith. I think you want to stay in the faith yourself. And one of the things that you have to remember is not your persuasive presentation. It's not your choice of word. It is not how you decide to structure a worship service in a new and innovative way, or go back to an old one to make you think carefully about the richness of our Christian heritage in worship. What makes the difference is the gospel message. Luther said this in his sermon: in short, I will preach it, teach it, write it, but I will constrain no man by force, for faith must come freely without compulsion. Take myself as an example. I opposed indulgences and all the papists, but never with force. I simply taught, preached, and wrote God's word. Now, obviously, that real vigorously. And that's what he did. Otherwise, I did nothing. And while I slept or drank Wittenberg beer with my friends Philip and Arnsdorf, the word so greatly weakened the papacy that no prince or emperor ever inflicted such losses upon it. I did nothing. The word did everything. And I think it's real important that all of us keep that in mind. What accomplishes itself is not our talents, not our abilities. God uses them, but ultimately the tool, the only thing that unlocks people's hearts is where faith comes from, a cleverly delivered sermon, hearing the message. That's what creates faith, that gospel message. All right, so we're going to look at the book of Revelation, which is why I gave you the outline, and we're going to kind of narrow in up. But I have a question first of all. How many of you ever had somebody come up to you with one of these and stab you with it?
A lead pencil?
This is not a lead pencil. As long as you...
No, come on.
Do you have any children?
Yes, I do.
Did you have them get shots?
Yes.
Before they got their shots, what did you tell them?
It's going to hurt. Hold on to me.
All right, wonderful. It's going to hurt. Hold on to me. How many of you ever heard from your parents or the nurse, this won't hurt a bit? Okay,
I heard that line.
You use that line, okay.
I've heard.
Oh, you heard that line. You didn't use it. Okay, you heard that line.
It's going to hurt a lot.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is do you wonder about your parents' sanity if they say, it's not going to hurt a bit, and then the stranger comes up with a metal needle, sticks it in your arm. I don't care how small the needle is, that hurts. Right? And puts it in. And we have 5 children, and I just have the belief that you tell your kids, you don't say things that are truthful and scare them to death. Okay, there's a way to present the truth without terrifying. And we would always tell them, you get a shot, it's going to hurt. But the hurt is only going to last for a short time, and what comes out of that shot is something that's going to help your health and protect you from a much greater danger. Had the experience with our daughter. We had a series of broken bones. I don't know if I should tell us, my wife's going to be upset. No, she won't. But she'll never hear about it anyway. So anyway, we had all this series of broken bones, and she was, thinking this is just disastrous. And make a long story short, a couple in the congregation had said, you got to take the night off, and we'll babysit your kids. Well, guess what happened while we were taking the night off? The next broken bone. And so we go to the hospital. It's our 4th experience with a broken bone. She was scared to face the doctor because she was fearing she was going to haul up on charges of child abuse or something with so many broken bones in one family. And the doctor presented all the cases. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but presented all the cases. And it was obvious that it boiled down to 2 choices. Either check her to the hospital and put her in overnight, and the next day they would sedate her and they would reset her arm. Or the other one is immediately in the next 30 minutes they would reset her arm with no painkillers. Because no painkillers, put painkillers in, it would take too long, the swelling would make it impossible. And this is where my wife loves that I am the head of the family. She advised me all sorts, which she should as a good Christian wife. But she always loves it when we get to situations like this because she says, God made you the head, you choose. And and then she said, but make it right. and I said, because we've been through the other things, I said to the doctor, asked him some questions about how much pain was involved and et cetera, and how long this took. And I made the decision, I said, go ahead and set it right now. No painkiller. And they let us out of the room, and they brought us back in within just a couple of minutes. And my daughter was on that table, in the emergency room, and she turned around, and she had this blotchy face, and she had tears running down her cheeks, and she had the biggest smile. And my wife was scared to walk in the room, so I was the one walking in first. And she looked at me, she turned around and looked at me, and she says, Daddy, was I ever brave? And I will tell you, from all of our kids' experience with broken bones, she had the best experience. Did she go through a lot of pain, excruciating pain? Yes, but it lasted for less than a minute. Whereas we had been through the overnight sedatum, when you go into the hospital to get set, they have got needles in the kids all overnight. You try sleeping as a little kid with stuff in your arm, and the anticipation they're going to do something to your arm the next morning. And I think she had the best experience because the doctor was upfront and honest with me, and we were upfront and honest with her. It's going to hurt. It's going to be over. Now, the reason I tell that story is because this is why I like the book of Revelation. God's honest with us. He doesn't just sugarcoat things and say, hey, listen, guys, we're all going to be in heaven because my son has paid for your sins, and it's going to be great. In the book of Revelation, you find out, until we get to heaven, it's not going to be so great. In the Old Testament, God had tried to present to his people what the coming Messiah would mean, and all they picked out was the passages that talk about the conquering king. They did not pick out the passages of the suffering servant who would be bruised for our iniquities. Right? He's going to be crushed. He's going to go as a lamb to the slaughter. Somehow they missed all those Bible passages. And I think it's important, if we're going to be Christians today, understand our loving Lord is upfront and honest. Not to terrify us, but to say, this is how it is. You do not lose heart, because I knew this all coming. And this is how it works. And so what we're going to do is, that section about the angel with the everlasting gospel is here. And so I'm going to give you a real brief comment about the book, and then we're going to pick up the book in the section right before the 7 trumpets and see if we can get to the third vision of the beast right before that passage. Okay, that's at least our goal. All right. Along the way, most of this, by the way, is kind of negative. This is the gospel message of Jesus going out, but there's the red horse of war, there's the black horse of famine, there's the pale horse of disease, and there's persecution, and then there's the last judgment. And God is going to have a lot of of negative things that he's going to present. And then he stops usually and gives you some pictures or glimpses of heaven. Here at the very beginning, when he wrote letters, he also did that, where he'd say what's wrong, but also every letter ends with a promise that has to do with everlasting life. And the book of Revelation is set up this way. I made this, just kind of a visual person, and I made this to illustrate the book of Revelation. It has an introduction. Jesus appears to John on the Patmos. It has a conclusion. Tells us, don't add or subtract my word, I'm coming soon. Okay? And then what he does is he looks at the future from different angles, which is kind of cool. He'll look at things. And the first time he looks at kind of their present, the 7 letters and the 7 churches, this is kind of what's going on here, this is what's wrong, this is what's right. I find it very interesting. There's only one congregation that has no problem with persecution and no problem with false doctrine. And that's the only congregation God has nothing good to say about it. And the other congregation that seems to not have a problem, I'm not entirely sure, does not seem to have a problem with persecution or false doctrine, he says, you guys are all dead. The 5 congregations that are remaining, and they all have comments given to them. In fact, one of them had no criticism at all, condemnation. They're all struggling with false doctrine and persecution. If you're a good parent, it's never good to leave a needle lying around. If you're a good parent, are you going to have your kids get this? Right? Now, obviously, there's some bad things that can happen from a shot, right? You can get a reaction from a shot. But you know that ultimately it is for the good of our community and it's the good of your individual child. And God understands that, is that sometimes, against that backdrop, it makes the love of Christ go more clearly for us and visibly for us. All right, just to kind of understand the book, as it starts out, this is the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave to show his servants the things that must happen without delay. And he sent this revelation by way of symbols. Now, this is the God's Word to the Nation. I think it's the next translation now. That's probably a little bit strong. This is probably a little weak in the NIV. He made it known by sending his angel. Just show him, this is the word here, show his servants what must take place. It is a word that really indicates, I'm going to demonstrate for you, I'm going to show you. So you get a clue in the very first verse. This is a book that is not an historical account in the normal sense. It is an account that's going to use symbolism. And in the first chapter, he makes it real clear because Jesus appears, and it says, he talks to John, and when John turned, he saw 7 golden lampstands, and among the lampstands, someone like the Son of Man. Now, he's not trying to talk about lampstands so much, he's trying to talk about something else. Now, he says it flat out in verse 20. The hidden meaning of the 7 stars that you saw on my right hand and of the 7 golden lampstands is this. The 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. Okay? Now, which is something God has already made pretty clear. And in the Gospel of Matthew it says, you're the light of the world to his disciples. The city on a hill can't be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead they put it on a stand and gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. And then later in Matthew, it records for where 2 or 3 come together in my name, there am I with them. Now, do you guys ever have a hard time remembering simple stuff? Especially if it's over and over and over again. So God gets the last book of the Bible, and he wants to make sure you don't miss some of the key thoughts. And so when he comes to the church that is now really going to face persecution, now Christianity is an illegal religion. The Roman government sees a distinction between Jews and Christians we put to death. How would you feel living in a culture like that? You feel a little bit depressing, like God doesn't know what's going on? God's left me because all I see is my relatives being hauled off to jail. And so he has a visual picture. For those of us who are visual learners, he's got 7 lampstands, a lampstand for each church. And I'm standing right there among them. And by the way, if you read your letters, actually if you read the letters kind of crosswise, because they're divided up into sections, he starts out with almost every letter after he introduces himself. He says, I know this, and I know this. I haven't forgotten what you're going through. I know all this stuff. and I'm right there. I want you to be lights. Do you ever get the mentality, I want to hold on to the gospel? Instead, I want to let this being kids. What is the typical kids song with motions and figures? Let this little light of mine, I'm gonna shine. Right? You ever hear kids do that? And then they do the bushel one. Put it under a bushel, and what's the next thing the kids say?
No.
Yeah, no, you got the volume too. Right? The no. Okay? That's not what we're after. And so we need to remember this. Luther understood this. He could have just said, I understand now, I'm saved by Jesus Christ. It wasn't these good works, it wasn't my penance, it wasn't beating myself, it wasn't fasting in the monastery. I'm all set. No, he needed to shine. He needed to shine. I'm sorry, I did this before, and my cursor was on this screen. The 7 stars, which is kind of an unusual picture, but if you read the Bible, God talks about the people who bring the gospel message to others as like stars shining in the universe. And here he uses it again. He says the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches. And we're convinced, we're conditioned, aren't we? As soon as you hear the word angel, you think what? Oh, that's wonderful, doing messenger. 99% of the population, at least I've bumped into, thinks a spiritual being. Right? And you're right, the original Greek word is messenger, here it is. 7 stars are angels, the messengers of the 7 churches. All we've done is taken, you can translate a word or you can transliterate a word. And in this case, the Bible transliterated. It didn't translate. It should have said messengers here, but it doesn't. It just said, we're just going to use the word, because we don't know which one they're talking about, the ones in heaven or the ones who are messengers on earth. Which I think the context seems, yes, I want you to write a letter to each of the, who would be the messenger of the church? Pastors, am I right? I want you to write to the pastors, which, by the way, I hold in my right hand. Okay. All right, so it's that kind of symbolism, and that idea of messenger is important. And I thought I'd go back again to Luther and make this as one-on-one as I possibly could, to someone who doesn't have a lot of personal contact with Luther, who's a pretty famous individual, Albert Durr. When he was a young guy in his 20s, he did a whole set of pictures on Revelation because he was capitalizing on the fear of the time. You ever know something about humans? They figure when we turn a century mark or a double zero mark in the calendar, something big's going to happen. Right? Those of you who remember going through the year 2000. And people fixating on computers and Y2K and stuff like that. 1500, they figured it's the end of the world. So, Albert Durr theories, I can sell a lot of prints here, I'll just make prints of Revelation, the end of the world type of stuff. And so he's got a picture of that. But this is what he said. He wrote in his diary in 1520, and God help me to go, that I may go to Dr. Martin Luther. Thus I intend to make a portrait of him with great care and engrave him on a copper plate to create a lasting memorial of the Christian man who helped me overcome so many difficulties. And I think all of us know in this case, this is not a case where he's helping him out with a few bucks, giving him some patrons to go to sell his paintings to. It is just the gospel message. It is just your sins that bother you, that are difficult for you, that trouble you. You will never, ever conquer, but Jesus has conquered. And he's paid for. And our goal, and I hope your goal is when you come to a conference like this, is not as, hey, can I learn some interesting facts? Can I get my faith rejuvenated? But can I have a message and a motivation to share that and to be an angel, to be a messenger, to have that everlasting gospel to proclaim to the world, to the people I bump into. Now, it was not a pleasant world back then for them. This is what he wrote a couple of years later. He wrote, because of our Christian faith, we have to stand in scorn and danger, for we are rebel and called heretics. This is Durr talking, not Luther. Here is a painter by profession, which, by the way, most of his clients are going to be nobles. The Emperor Charles V, his dad, or grandpa, Maximilian, big patron of this. And these are Catholics. So if he stands up for his faith and what the Bible teaches, and Luther preaches, yes, he's in big trouble. All right. What do you think about Korea sending a missile over the United States and hitting us?
Start World War III.
Start World War III. How many deaths?
Thousands here, millions there.
Thousands there, millions there. I think because we are focused on what we see, we sometimes get preoccupied by things that God talked about, the signs of the end of the world in Matthew 24, and that in Revelation have already been covered in the previous chapter, or 2 chapters before, Revelation 6. The red horse was wars and rumors of wars. Black horse had to do with famines and shortage of food supply. Pale horse added to that idea as disease and pestilence. Earthquakes was covered. Persecution, and the people have been killed, and just their souls now in heaven because they're dead. Yes, we sometimes notice all this stuff, but God was trying to make the point that what is a bigger problem is false Christs in the world. What's a bigger problem is falling away from the faith. What's a bigger problem is false prophets. It's the love of a Christian for sinful man. That's the bigger problem. And so that's where we really want to start. So let's take a look at the 7 trumpets. First trumpet sounded the trumpet. There came hail and fire mixed with blood, and it hurled down upon the earth, and a third of the earth was burned up, a third of the trees were burned up, all the green grass was burned up. Okay? And then he goes on, he says, the second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a huge mountain, all ablaze, was thrown into the sea. And the sea turned into blood. A third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. Would that get our attention, by the way? Okay, cheapy graphics, all right, but, you know, if a third of the sea turned to blood, I think it'd make the evening news. Right? And then he talks about a third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star blazing like a torch fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. And the name of the star is wormwood, which means bitterness. A third of the waters turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that have become bitter. And you're looking at this, and the first time I read this, and I thought, I don't know what's going on. It sounds really kind of bad. And then you put it in the context of Scripture. God is using imagery to depict spiritual lessons, just as he's not talking about 7 candlesticks, he's talking about a Christian congregation who should light the way. He's not talking about angels in his hand, he's talking about messengers and pastors who should shine like a star to lead people to righteousness. And here we have almost the exact opposite. Bad stuff is happening. Fourth angel, it says, sounded his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon was struck, the stars, so that a third of them turned dark, and a third of the day was without light, and also a third of the night. Now, I'll try to summarize this real quickly, is when you consider images from the Old Testament about this stuff, think of Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers, but he goes to the synagogue every day. And he's like a permanent fixture in the synagogue. That's not how it says it, right? But his delight is in the law of the Lord. He goes right to the heart. Not just even the action he's doing, but what's going on in his heart. He delights in God's law, and he thinks about it all the time, day and night. And the comparison, he's like a tree planted by streams of water, which yield its fruit in season, whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers. That being nurtured from God's word is like having water coming into it. Or think of Psalms. It makes me lie down in green pastures. Feeding on God's word is like a sheep feeding in a pasture. Okay? Or the famous passage about life, your word is a light. Right? And so if in the final book of the Bible he's talking about a third of this is gone, a third of this is gone, a third of this is gone, what's happening to God's word? It's being obscured. By the way, do you feel that way in our society? It's been obscured. Okay. Now, this originally came as a punishment from God. Remember, it didn't start with the beginning of the chapter, but God was responding to some prayers, and it said he threw this mountain into the sea, if this is the kind of stuff that happened, because God said more clearly, the time will come when men will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths. Who's got the largest Christian congregation in America? What's the fastest?
Osteen.
Osteen, right? You ever hear him? Right? He talks about a lot of positive stuff, right? Prosperity gospel. Good things are going to happen. You read the Bible, God says, nah, that's not how it happens usually for Christians. Disciples thought good things should happen to Jesus, right? Jesus going to go and be crucified. No, that's not going to happen, Peter said. Is that does the world, because who in this room wouldn't like good things to happen to them? Right? You look at forward and say, I hope as my presentation ends today that the building collapses and I'm made. This is dumb, right? We want good things to happen to us, and we start to buy into things that we want to hear. I've never figured it out. Is one of the things I teach at the high school is I teach a course with my wife called Friendship to Marriage. And I've done, for the last 25 years, a lot of studying about marriage and what makes for a happy marriage. And I've been to conferences all over the place on it. And I've read the statistical studies. Sex before marriage, what does that do to your chances of a lifelong marriage? It hurts them. Every single study comes back the same way. It just does. And this is going back for decades and decades. And yet, do people in our culture think maybe sex outside of marriage is not so bad? It's a good way to get to know the opposite sex. It's a good way to have some fun. By the way, how much fun are we having with broken families and unwanted pregnancies and killing babies? You mentioned what would happen if Korea struck and the deaths. How many deaths have we had? 50-some million legal deaths in this country from abortion. You'd think people would think about that. But they like to label it pro-choice. I'm giving a woman the right to choose. I'd like to have that as a teacher. Pro-choice for a teacher. I get to decide who lives and dies in my classroom. I wouldn't have to kill that many people, right? One well-placed death would probably straighten out a class. Just, and that would probably last for a couple of years even.
Don't get any ideas.
Now, they perish because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion. I never understood how people would buy stuff, things like the stars influence your life, or evolution. I mean, spontaneous generation was disproved. And then what happens? We come along with evolution and they say, no, they'll never call it spontaneous generation, but that's what they're basically saying, right? Is you had to have no life and then all of a sudden, there was life. Spontaneous generation, but it only happened once. Because I wouldn't want to have to account for that more than one time. Okay. My daughter got her doctorate in biochemistry. She started out in microbiology. And she thought she was going to have a tough time. She did have her supervisor. Her first supervising instructor was definitely an atheist, and basically sent a couple of their students into the mental institution back at school and said, "Why don't you press charges against her because we'd like to get rid of her, but we can't because of tenure." And my daughter was not inclined to that, so she ended up switching to another professor. But anyway, while she was there, she knew that would not necessarily be a friendly place for Christians. But she said it was kind of interesting. A visiting professor came in to lecture the whole medical college. And he said, what you learned here in this school, nobody knew about 50 years ago. And he started off with a passage from Psalms. This is a doctor in microbiology. And he talked about, he said, the cell is so complex, and we have found out how complex it is for a single cell. He said, that could possibly have happened. And here he come to the conclusion, it wasn't because he was a Christian and worked his way backwards, he just said, this is just way too complex. I mean, some people talk about intelligent design and stuff like that, is that they come to the conclusion, but do some people still persist in, I think we just evolved. Type of thing. And one of the reasons is that, you know what, I told you in the Bible how I did it. 6 days. I made it. By the way, he says that 10 times, over 10 times. He identified himself over 30 times that God created the stuff. And he said, I did it in 6 days. And in case you're not paying attention, I did it on a day that has an evening and a morning. And you don't repeat a definition of a word 6 times unless you're trying to make a point. He does that. And they number them. And you don't use day with a 1 and a 2 unless you're talking about, a day, evening and morning. So it's like, and then he gets to, how do things reproduce according to their time? 10 times. over 30 times God. I mean, that one page in the Bible is like, I'm trying to make the point, I made this thing, it did not evolve, it was 6 days, none of this millions of year stuff, it happens. Okay, you want to believe that? You're going to come up with some really stupid idea. Like, it was there. All right. And then after those 4 angels, the delusion sent by God, the eagle flies and says, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because the trumpet blast about to sounded by the other 3 angels. In other words, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. And so the 5th angel sounds his trumpet. And do you want me to read it, or can I just do a summary?
Summary.
Okay, so let's do a summary. When I taught Revelation, the first time I tried to explain to all my students, this is what this means, this is what this means. And I thought, that's kind of dumb, because then they're just going to take the word for it, because I'm the pastor in the classroom. That's what Pastor Becker said. Which is really bad news, because why do we want people to believe stuff? Because God says it. Right? Because God says it. And so I said, it's one of my classes, I've been doing this for a couple of years, I said, you know what? I don't want to teach you that. I said, I want to show you how you can let God speak without somebody else having to tell you this is what it means. Because the basic principle of biblical interpretation is what? Let Scripture interpret Scripture, okay? So I said, just read the section. The only guideline I gave him, as I said, because it makes it a little bit easier, I said, look for the major component in this section. And then after you got the major component, take the details and link them up with the components they go to, and then start thinking about everything you've read in the Bible and everything else in the book of Revelation to figure out what's the point that God's going to make in this section. And when you read this section, and it happens without fail, so I've gotten to the point where I just made this chart, and I said, it boils down to some component parts, and they all agree it was 3. And I said, list them, and they all list them. And they said in this section there is an abyss, there is a angel of the abyss, and there's a bunch of locusts that come out. And I said, okay, now what are the things that God associates with each of those 3 things? And the abyss, he doesn't have much of anything except for he calls it the abyss, and out of it comes the locust. And somehow this angel of the abyss has some control over it. Well, how is the word abyss used in the Bible? Well, think of Jesus' ministry. What is the one time that you can think of Jesus having, the Holy Spirit recording the word abyss in an account of Jesus?
Casting out of the demons into the
Swine. And the angels didn't want to go to the abyss, the bottom parts of hell. And you read the book of Revelation, I'm not going to show up there because I knew I was going to run out of time. Yes, there's 8 of them, and it's really clear in Revelation. The abyss refers to hell. So it's kind of like doing crossword puzzles when you do symbolic literature. You do crossword puzzles? Sudoku? Jigsaw puzzles? You do one of those, don't you? Okay, right, and you start with the easiest pieces, don't you? And that's the way you should start here, is it's the easiest pieces. So, okay, the abyss is that, and they all come to, yeah, that's hell, that's got to be hell. And then there's the angel of the abyss, and he's got a much longer description. It starts with him being a star, but he falls. It's a fallen star. A star that falls, and he has some keys to the abyss. It doesn't say he goes in and out and locks himself up and goes out. He just says he's got keys to the abyss, and what he does is unlocks the locusts. He is the king. He's in charge of the locusts, and he allows them to go out, and he releases it. And with this locust comes smoke that obscures the sun, which God has used often for his word, right? The bright shining, of his word. And so somehow what gets released from hell is going to obscure the gospel message. And then he's referred to by 2 other names. And you all know that God, when he names something, it's always a description of what he names. I don't think your parents did that, did they? Any of you get named because of something about your person, who you are? You got named Red because you were red-skinned and had red hair. Okay. And I got the name James, which goes back to Jacob, heel grabber. I did not grab my brother's heel until I was probably about 7, and we were racing for who gets to sit next to the chair by the TV set. And I tripped him up, and I grabbed his heel and pulled him back all over. But that happened after I was born. Is we tend to just pick a name because we like the sound of it, whereas God picks a name to describe it. And he calls this Abaddon. I'll do it in 2 languages for you just so you get the message. This guy is bad news. he ends up destroying. Now, I'm trying to do this real briefly. I could do a much longer presentation, but you guys can probably come to the conclusion. Who would be the guy who lets stuff out of hell to obscure the sun and is a destroyer? That's got to be Satan, right? Okay. And then the last thing is the locust. Okay? And that's where God spends a lot of time. Now, he gives you a clue, just in case you somehow fall asleep and you think there's a real locust coming out after you. Is these things don't eat the grass, because what do locusts do by the way they're built? These green stuff. These ones don't eat it. And they come out of hell. And they come out of this smoke. And who can they harm?
Only the people that are.
Only the people who are not sealed. And that goes back to chapter 7. People who are sealed are the believers. So in other words, the messages from hell can only harm people who are unbelievers, because the believers know what the truth is. You said today, didn't you? Why would God ever let you into hell? I bet you sinned yesterday too, didn't you? The day before that. Did you do more than one yesterday? Okay. Now you can smile because it's a nice class demonstration and we're not picking on your sins. If I start naming them, you just squirm a little bit more. If I got real specific about one that really bothers you, she called it. Nobody in this. I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable. You wouldn't see his face, I did. He was smiling real nicely until I said that last line. And I don't know if a sin came to mind, but we all have them, right? Things that we have done. But when the devil does that, what do? You go back to, Jesus said, I have washed you. I have washed you. Guys, your colleagues, your friends, your pastor, your parents, your spouse, whoever it is, who loves you dearly, they're not trying to turn you into people who never sin, because that's impossible. What they want you to understand is, yeah, I hope you don't sin, because sin ultimately leads to pain and heartache and sadness. It grieves our Heavenly Father, and it causes us an awful lot of problems. But they want you to understand that whenever you're bothered by sin, you go to Jesus. Whenever you're depressed about how bad it's in the world, you go to Jesus. And when the devil, whose name Satan means accuser, when he accuses you and when his minions accuse you, don't worry about it, because you know the truth. I'm saved. I'm not perfect. I am forgiven. He said they have the power to torture but not kill. And there's a pagan writer who once wrote, there's nothing worse than the pangs of a bad conscience. It doesn't kill you. Who would be the poster child for a bad conscience in the Bible? New Testament. Think of somebody with a really bad conscience. Judas, right? Now in that case, he wasn't killed by anybody else. He ended up killing himself because he couldn't stand it anymore, right? He was really sorry about what he had done. His problem is not that he wasn't sorry, but that he didn't look as Jesus is the one to fix it. And what's it going to look like? They wear something like crowns of gold. It makes them look like they're in charge. And they actually look not like they're from hell, but they're human. And not that they're a big threat, because let's face it, okay, I'm a guy. Girls' hair gets attention of guys usually. Which is why you ladies spend so much time on your hair, right? Ladies, do you realize how much time you would have if you just shave yourself bald? Just do a crew cut, right? Don't mean to pick on you, but okay, which is right there, and see long hair. And but you won't, because in our culture, does hair attract? Not that I'm suggesting you ladies are all trolling for men to find, but is it does get their attention, and will false doctrine kind of be attractive at times? But they got lion's teeth. How did God describe the devil? Walks around like a roaring lion. And they're going to be hard to do away with. Your Bibles are all here. If you have a breastplate of iron back at that time in history, you're pretty well protected, aren't you? It's going to be hard to kill these messengers, these locusts from hell. And he hints at this and comes back with other illustrations. He says, really locusts, by the way, what's their attacking part of their body? I mean, real locusts. Is they're eating stuff, right? You don't think of the rear end, do you? Okay. But here it talks about that these guys have tails and stings like scorpions. Scorpions, you do worry about the rear end, don't you? That you're real nervous about the rear end because that's where the bite is. And one of the things I think is going to come on, actually, I'll go later.
5 months.
Oh, if you know.
Yeah, usually it's 3.5 or 7, or is that half a 10?
This is one where I tell my students, all I can say is, right in there, 3.5 to 7, about 5 months, is the average length of a locust plate. Of a locust plate.
Oh.
And so I speculate here, and I always tell them I'm speculating too. I don't want to teach it as fact. These are evil spirits from hell. But
Well,
I say,
I'm thinking of the Mohammedans. What was that? 680 until now.
yeah.
That's a long time.
I don't think that that's what it's referring to. I think it's more like you have other ideas that kind of come and go. You know, the idea of things on, I would do something real concrete instead of spiritual, just to make my point, is what were innovations on marriage? It was have multiple partners. Wealthy man have many wives to show he's powerful. In our culture, we don't like that idea, right? And then I went to mistresses. Mistresses have kind of fallen out of favor, and you know, it moves on. Did you guys ever think, those of you who are older, ever thought that you would live to see people talk about gay marriages? I mean, I knew gay rights was coming. I mean, that you could see years and years ago. But that we go so fast to gay marriage. Now, if you take it with doctrines like Pelagianism, you know, you do something to gain heaven. And Pelagius was condemned by the church, but the Catholic Church accepted semi-Pelagianism. He accepted it in a milder form. I think it's the idea is that ideas kind of have their moment in the day and then they go away and then they come back again. I think this resurgence of certain false doctrines. That you might think you've defeated them and you've done away with them, but they come back in a different form. As long as we're talking, return to Wittenberg, do you realize everybody at that time accepted the Bible as God's Word? Do you realize all of Europe, except for the Jews? Bible's God, they weren't debating that. The Bible's God's Word. What was the ploy? And I don't know if you want to sign it to the devil, I don't know if you assign it to evil angels, I don't know if you want to assign it to men or to the Antichrist, but the ploy was get people to say, that's too important to trust to a commoner. You've got to have somebody who is professional do it. Otherwise, they'll get screwed up. And you'll have false doctrine. And so, does the devil sometimes use different methods to obscure God's Word? How comfortable would you guys be about studying the book of Revelation all on your own? See, think about it. If you just read all the books in order, do you think you read the first 65 and then you go to Revelation? Yeah. I tested this in the class years ago. I said, you know what? First 3 days of class, all I want you to do is read the book of Revelation. I'll give you time in class for 3 days, and I want you to read outside of class, kind of pace yourself, because everybody reads at a different speed. By the end of 3 days, I want the whole book of Revelation read. And then I gave them a quiz. I said, what's the point of Revelation? Every single student got the point. There wasn't a single student in the class who didn't get the point. I said, do you understand everything? He said, no. But I got the point. I got other things. I got some interesting, supporting things as they figured out. Now, obviously, they go back and reread. It's kind of like if you watch a movie a second time, you pick up stuff you missed the first time. Okay, and it's a complicated movie. You're sometimes still partly confused about that movie. But the more you reread it and look at it and stuff like that, it becomes clearer. Book of Revelation, I have no problem with people reading their Bibles. I think it scares sometimes us as pastors is to let lay people just study the Bible in their homes. Because we're not there. Now, obviously, can there be some danger that people go half-cocked? But ultimately, if they're in contact with the Word of God, does God promise this Holy Spirit is there and has the power to create faith? And let's face it, those of us who have served in public ministry, have we ever screwed up? Never mind, I don't want to ask that question. All right. Okay. Told the Jews, you belong to your father the devil. You want to carry out your father's desire. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding his truth. There's no truth in him. He's the father of lies. And it's going to get worse because he is an angel, and he's got power that you don't have, and that humans don't have. The Antichrist, that's the lowest one. The coming of the Antichrist will be in accordance with the work of Satan, displaying all kinds of counterfeit miracles, signs, and wonders. In Timothy, says the Spirit clearly says that in latter times some will abandon the faith and follow deceiving spirits, things taught by demons. Who are the right mind to go follow a demon? But do people do it? You reject God's word. You know, who do you think is smarter? An angel who's been here for 6,000 years, or you? All right. Now, God says it plainly here, but he pictures it in Revelation again because, let's face it, we sometimes don't get the point. And what are we supposed to do, dear friends? Do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. Because many false prophets have gone out into the world. Now, I haven't stopped to talk about Luther much here because I want to kind of paint a picture of what God said 1,400 years before Luther came on the scene. Did he have to face a lot of false doctrine? From the enthusiasts, the Schwimmer, the people who thought they were really intelligent, you know, the Calvins of the world, and the Antichrist, and just all sorts of problems. And God said 400 years, that's the way it's going to be. Just the way it's going to be. Sixth trumpet. Sixth trumpet. All right. I was too lazy to do 200 million horsemen here, but this one involves 200 million horsemen who, it says, are bound with the great river Euphrates. Now, if you guys know your geography, all the enemies to God's people on earth apparently came from the other side of the Euphrates River. You have the Persians over there who tried to kill every Jew. You have the city of Nineveh, was on the other side of the Euphrates River. They took the 10 tribes captive. You have the Babylonians that crossed the Euphrates River and came over the Fertile Crescent and took out the southern kingdom. And so he's using kind of that historical thing, kind of like, if I use the reference in this century, Benedict Arnold. What do you immediately think of? Traitor, right? Not a war hero in the revolution, because he was up to that point, right? So he thought he wasn't getting enough glory and credit, so he turned the other side, is traitor. So we take something from the past to kind of do a visual picture of traitor today. God took something from the past, the Old Testament, the enemy of God's people from this earth. And he pictured them, these are released to kill a third of mankind. This is not like it's spiritually killing you. This is physical death you have to defend with. And there's 200 million of them. And they have breastplates. And I'm not going to go through all the detail and make a case, but they wear the colors of hell. Because hell is pictured as a lake of burning sulfur. And that's yellow and smoke and fire, which, by the way, sulfur, yellow, I think your Bible might say dark blue. Lexicographers are debating which color blue this really is. I think it's probably that smoke like blue, fire red, is that they may not be sent by the devil, but they're used by the devil. Okay? And by the way, out of their mouths comes fire, smoke, and sulfur. When you think of the troops or the horses themselves, do you think of their mouth as being the biggest problem? No, he's not trying to talk about horses and horsemen. He's talking about what they say and what they do. And people are killed by what comes out of their mouth. And the power of the horses is in their mouths and in their tails. Again, if horses attack you on the way out of this building, there's 20 horses lined up on the other side of the square, and they're charging for you. What part of the horse scares you? The feet, right? They're going to trample you. The breast is going to knock you over, and then he's going to stomp on you, huffs, and that's not going to be so good. And he says here the problem is in their message, and it's a message that actually physically kills. And it's the front part and the back part. You get it both ways. The leftover residual things. And what happens for God says that for the world is mankind doesn't repent yet, doesn't quite get the message. He is using something bad to get you to see something good. Those of you who are parents, and those of you who are children who have parents who disciplined you, why did your parents spank you? And parents, why do you spank kids? Let out your frustrations.
Emphasis.
Because sometimes they're not paying attention, right? You gotta make sure. If I had one kid, we had 5 kids. One of them, we were just hoping he would live to adulthood. Okay? He'd go run out in the street and figure cars would bounce off of him. This is no joke. I mean, this kid had absolutely no fear of death. We were walking along the swimming pool, we were on vacation. He checked out the pool at the motel. I have a hold of him, but you know kids are really smart, right? So he lulled me up with a sense of security, so I released my grip. Even I should have known better with this one. So I released my grip, and as soon as I released my grip and he could feel it, release a little bit, pulled the hand straight down and stepped into the pool, sank like a rock. Okay. And this school has special memories because when our daughter, who got her doctorate, was graduating from college, it wasn't this college, it was a different college, our son was at this college. And we had to go to bed early because we had to go through the lectures because the President of the United States spoke at graduation. And so we had gone to bed early, and also the phone rings at 12 o'clock. We were going to pick up our son here from college. We swing by early in the morning, pick him up, go to the metal detectors and sit there for hours waiting for the president to come. Get a call at 12 o'clock, and he said, Dad, we've been trying for about 30 minutes to get the bleeding to stop, but it won't. It's not the phone call you want to get at midnight. And so Anna pulled him out the hospital. That's the last time we decided to take him to the hospital. He's been hospital free now for several years. But you got to emphasize it because people don't get it. And let's face it, we can smugly look at other people. Let's face it, are there things about God's word that we just don't get? And we think we do it better, type of thing. And God lets this stuff happen, and these enemies come from mankind. I don't know if Jim Jones, who got his followers to drink poison Kool-Aid, was from the devil or is just wacky ideas all on his own. I don't know for sure whether Islam is inspired by the devil. I always kind of wonder about that he was out in the desert and evil angels were talking to him. Or did he just was one of those thinker guys who had been riding camels too long, carrying Christian ideas and pagan ideas and Jewish ideas, and he decided, I got something better that can put them all together. And also, I don't like people, so we're going to just jihad that we kill people that we don't like and get them out of the picture. And let's face it, it causes real problems. Now, you guys all know this hymn, right? And I'm sure some of you know what the real words were.
Do the original, yeah. Put the original up.
Put the original up, okay. Or keep us steadfast in the word, restrain the murderous, pope, and church. Those of you who are purists and want the Germans down there for you. Now, I've known that for years, and I've used that in various contexts for years. What I did not know until I prepared for this presentation was when it was published in 1542, it appeared with the subtitle, A Children's Hymn.
I like that little book.
Now, a children's hymn to be sung against the two arch enemies of Christ and the Holy Church, the Pope and the Turk. Okay? You go into a third grade classroom and say, we're going to sing a hymn about the arch enemies to the Church, the Pope and the Turk. Today, I don't think we can quite understand that. And so I'm thinking, I'm one of those people who've got to figure out why stuff happens. And I'm about to tell you, I do not know if this is what motivated him to label it as a children's hymn. But it's one of those things, do you ever learn stuff and all of a sudden it comes back to you at weird moments? And you make connections. And I started to think about janissaries. You guys know what are janissaries? Solomon the Magnificent.
No, go ahead.
Solomon the Magnificent wanted a standing army, and he wanted people who were loyal to him alone. And so the Turkish sultans, what they would do is they would take Christian boys from the age of 6 to 14, and they'd grab them, and then they send them off to Islamic families in rural areas for initial indoctrination in Islam. And then they'd send them back, and he would incorporate them into his government and his army. And discipline was absolutely severe. But he had this hardcore, ultra-loyal part of his army who were great fighters and eventually became officials in the Turkish government. And they all came from Christians. And what was the big problem at Luther's time? Yeah, they're at the gates of Vienna. 700 years before that, they'd come up through Spain and stopped at the Battle of Tours by Charles Martel, right? And by the way, everybody that come to that battle, something weird happened there. You may have a miracle in your hands that happened at that battle. And then 700 years later, they came up the other way. That drawing had of Luther, Budapest. Buda was, by the way, taken. The year before he wrote this hymn, two huge losses for Charles V. A huge naval loss and a huge military loss. And it did not look good. Did not look good for the Napoleonic Empire. And by the way, you were a parent of kids, and you knew, by the way, what they do is they just kept, this one just worked. If they conquered your region, they leveled taxes and said every, I forget what the ratio was now. I should have read it down. 1 out of 20, it was either 20% or 1 out of 20 kids were sent from Christian families into this group. Would that be on your mind if you were a little kid, maybe? Keep me steadfast in the word. What happens when I get taken? What happens when the Catholic Church gets a hold of me? What happens when the Church gets a hold of me? All right. Significance of the six trumpet novel heresies or false worldviews are demon possessed. Some of them are inspired by man. They still function to serve Satan. Humanism, materialism. How many people haven't died because of materialistic attitudes? Communism. When our first child was born, I still had to wait before I could go in the room. And I started a conversation with this guy from Yugoslavia. And I said, how long have you been in America? And he told me, he said, I came over as a teenager. And I said, what made you come to America? He said, my family were wealthy farmers and they had this big, nice, huge farm. And one night the communists came in and they rousted us out of bed. And in the confusion and the darkness, I got away and got into the field. But I saw they took my entire family, they lined them up against the barn, and they shot my whole family. Because under communism, you have a redistribution of wealth. And that wasn't just redistribution like tax the rich people. It was like killing. Stalin, how many purges were there? And how many millions of people died? Abortion, 50 million dead in our country alone. Over 50 million in our country alone. How many people haven't died because of some weird belief? We live in a world like that. Now, we have a lot of bad stuff. Punishment from God, messages from hell, sinful humans with just deplorable ideas, people dead spiritually and physically. And also it stops and it talks about, and I'm going to skip through this, it talks about this angel, a messenger with his foot on the land, his foot on the sea, and he appears to John, and we're going to skip ahead to what he tells him. He says, then the voice that I heard from heaven spoke to me once more, go take the scroll that lies open in the hand of the angel who stands in the sea and on the land. And so I went to the angel and asked him to give me the little scroll. He said to me, take it and eat it, and I will turn your stomach sour, but in your mouth it will be as sweet as honey. And I took the little scroll from the angel's hand and ate it. And it tasted as sweet as honey in my mouth, but when I had eaten it, my stomach was turned sour. And then I was told, you must prophesy again about, that's a bad translation, I think, of the preposition. I prefer before. For many people, too many people's language is the case. Okay? This is almost a replay from the book of Ezekiel. When God comes to Ezekiel and he hands him a little book and says, eat it. By the way, if you had walked in here and I had a little pamphlet and I said, eat it, that would be a memorable experience, wouldn't it? Especially if I made you eat it and we're not leaving here until you chow down the last little piece of it. Any of you remember the prayer in the church? Read, mark, learn, and inwardly digest. What are we supposed to read, mark, learn, and inwardly digest?
That's why we got rid of prayer. Nobody can say
Yeah. It is the Word of God. And it is so interesting. You read the 7 letters to the 7 churches. What is the exact phrase, and it's the only phrase that is repeated word for word besides the command to write in those letters. Those who know the book of Revelation. He says the same thing to every congregation.
He who has ears, let him hear.
Thank you. He has ears, let him hear. Because I'm not going to pick on today's preacher, but if I asked you to write a summary of Sunday's sermon, how long would it be?
Even I can't remember my own. No, I can't.
Yeah. No, we had that problem sometimes.
Sometimes,
right?
yeah.
Sometimes we had that
Wait,
problem.
what was it?
Yeah, and you get with all the other things in the world. God does things to really drive home, and He'll use good things and bad things to make us pay up attention. 17 years ago, my wife contracted cancer, and they said we got to do this right away. We got to do surgery right away. So they did the surgery really quick. She was under the knife in less than that same week that she was diagnosed. And it was kind of cool. I got to share this with you because for those of you who are never going to become pastors or teachers in the Christian church, maybe even mothers or fathers, you know, the doctor, I did not know this, but the doctor, as soon as he said, the x-rays look like cancer, we got to take care of this. And he said, I need to pray about it. He said, do you mind if I pray? And he had a prayer that God would guide his hand and would bless my wife with renewed life. And as I got to know him, he is a devout Christian. He would bring his Bible to work. He would have devotions with doctors and nurses. Anyway, we talked to him more personally, just had the highest regard for him. But he lived his faith. And he did meditate on it day and night. I mean, he just, by the way, the devil did put the screws to him. He lost his wife. Time that my wife was recovering, his wife died. But he always had the confidence that, good times are bad, you have to depend on God. And whatever your profession is, whatever your vocation and calling in life is we're there to let our light shine. Whether you are a professional call messenger or whether you are just one of God's children, you should be ready to testify on both of my sins and share that. Well, he was supposed to eat it, and it was sweet because the gospel message, I'm forgiven, and I talk to people, and I tell them they're forgiven, which is just kind of cool news to share with them. And so God will always have that message, which is just more precious than gold from Psalms, sweeter than honeycomb. Jeremiah said, it's my joy, my heart's delight. By the way, if you know Jeremiah's life, he did not have a delightful life. But the one thing was, that he knew that God wasn't necessarily going to fix things in this world, but he was going to fix them in heaven. And he'd already fixed the relationship with God in this world because you can pray to your Heavenly Father, right? God didn't say, hey, listen, don't disturb me after what do you mean you did it? I'm not listening to any of your prayers today. No, you're standing as a forgiven child of God. Now, he does talk about after you eat it, it's bitter, and that's a reminder that when we preach, remember what Jesus said. Remember the words I spoke to you, no servant is greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. If they obey my teaching, they will obey yours also. And he says, then you'll be handed over to the disciples to be persecuted, to be put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. We all know, at least from church tradition, history, that almost all the disciples ended up killed for the faith. And John was exiled in Patmos for the faith. In this book is written. And that God says, I didn't mean to depress you on your first day at this conference. But I want you to understand is God doesn't, you can't go rah, 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 everything's great, it's a great conference that's gathered with Christians, we all support each other, we all believe the same thing, and it was just fabulous, which I hope it is. But we live in a world that is a basket case. And the reason I bring this up is, and maybe I'm the only one who has this problem, do you ever get depressed by the news you hear? Since I studied marriage and it's gone on, and I read an article in June about marriage and how many brides are virgins. And I just remember dropping the paper, leaning back in my chair, and thinking, this is just so sad. Because I have the statistics, for that kind of stuff for going back decades. And it is getting worse and worse and worse. By the way, they then ask people about, they hooked up to also different things in life. The group that is still married virgins, guess what's one of the things that they all have in common, and almost all have in common? They all go to church regularly. Now that doesn't mean Christians are better than anybody else, but does God's work in people's lives to let their light shine? And does he bless us with earthly marriages that are wonderful? Now the reason I told you about the cancer thing is that I remember when the doctor operated with my wife, And my wife was so out of it, she doesn't even remember the conversation at all. And he basically said, it looked pretty bad, but we need the results back from the tissue I took out. He said, I took a pretty generous margin. He said, I saw the lymph nodes were enlarged, which is really not a good sign if it's in the lymph nodes. He took out, I forget how many he told me he took out of her. And I still remember thinking, I'm losing my life. Now, I don't write things out as is tested by, I didn't give you a handout except for, 2 pages, because I don't write. My note cards to my wife were index cards. There's no joke. All our love letters, we have all our love letters. She wrote literally 18, 19, 20 pages long. Letters to me. I wrote her an index card. And index cards only have lines on one side, so that's the only side that's not writing. And the longest letter I ever wrote to my wife was when we went to the doctor to get the results from the test. And she told me later, she said, after I read that, and know how little you ever write, and put on a page, she said, I was sure I'm dead. I was trying to be encouraging, but she could read that, I figured this was it, I've never seen it. And the doctor said, he said, I can't believe the results. He said, they were all enlarged. I took them out. He said, you must have had another infection that your body was fighting at the same time. He said, the lymph nodes were all swollen from something else. It had nothing to do with the cancer. And so she got all her treatments, and by the way, she's alive and happy today and doing real well. But I will tell you, that brush with my wife almost dying cured me of ever taking my wife for granted. At least for 17 years, it's cured me. Because let's face it, do you ever take somebody for granted? Those of your parents back at home, you assume they're going to be there when you get home, don't you? Spouses back at home right now? You just kind of assume. And we sometimes take God for granted, and we have to understand is that God sometimes lets things happen in our life, even persecution, that draw us closer to God. All right. So if you look at this, I got 14 minutes and I'm halfway through. Okay. We're going to pause here for the trumpets so far. So we've had, the things sent by God to deal with the water and the grass and the light. And we've had the 200 million horsemen. We had the locusts from hell. And this is the kind of cool thing is God comes along, and you think he'd do something big, dramatic. He does a guy with a little open book. Against all the evil of this world, what does he do? It does the gospel message. What's the only thing to deal with all of these problems is God's word. And if you take the sixth trumpet in contrast to the 200 million horsemen, the 200 million wacky ideas that cause people to end up dead, is in contrast to that is the one true gospel message. Which is, we want to look for something really dramatic. God says, it's this message that makes the difference, that restores people. And then he goes on to talk about 2 witnesses. And again, he doesn't say there's going to be 1,000 witnesses, but he says there's 2 witnesses. And I'm going to kind of summarize this. So there's 2 witnesses, and he said, I want you to measure the temple, and I want you to divide it up. And the court of the Gentiles, the courtyard, I want to separate from the temple itself. Because he's trying to illustrate is that what's going to happen when you've got all these heresies from the devil, and nonsensical ideas, and you've got God's word, is that when you form a Christian church, you're going to have a mixture of these. And you're going to have some good and some truth in there, but you're also going to have some false doctrine in there. And that's going to go on, I think, that teaches, this is the New Testament era, that's going to just be true. God will always have his 2 witnesses. Jesus said, the laborers are few, but I'll always have my 2 witnesses. Matter must be established, God said in Deuteronomy, out of 2 or 3 witnesses. Haven't you ever wondered why there's 4 Gospels? 3 of them are basically the same thing. He could have made Bibles lighter by just getting rid of 2 of those books. But he didn't, because when it got to the most important part, he had it testified to by 4 witnesses. Some were in the inner circle, some were not. And he's always going to maintain. It might not seem like a big deal. By the way, when you ever think of Luther, who do you also think of? The Melanchthon. The guy who was a little more loving and gentle. Now that can get him into trouble too. Luther got in trouble with his big mouth. Melanchthon sometimes wanted to make peace too soon. Okay? But they each had contributions that they made, wonderful contributions to the church. Now these 2 witnesses, it talks about, and I'm sorry if you slow me down if you have to, but it describes two witnesses as fire comes out of their mouth. Now, that actually literally happened once. Elijah, the king of Israel, sent soldiers to arrest him. And a captain with 50 soldiers wasn't a Christian, wasn't a true Jew. And he said, the king wants to see you come down right now. And Elijah said, I am. He said, man of God. He said, man of God, come down, the king wants to talk to you. And Elijah said, if I'm a man of God, may fire come out of the heavens and consume you. When fire came out and consumed them. That'd be a good lesson to listen to the pastor, wouldn't it? Okay. Fire consumes them. Another captain is sent. The king's got a lot of captains, so he sends 50 more men. That captain is just as arrogant, come down, and Elijah said, if I'm a man of God, may fire come down and consume you. Fire come down and consume them. Third captain gets the job. Can you imagine being the third captain? And if you heard about the first two accounts, third captain has got some brains. And he begs for the life of his men and for himself. Because he's between a rock and a hard place. Is he a captain who has to listen to the king? It is not a sin to compel a guy to come to see the king. Okay? But he also knows this, I don't do this in an arrogant way. I do this as I showing respect not only for the king, but also for God's messenger. And so Elijah goes and sees the king and tells him, you're not going to get out of bed, you're going to die. But I just want to establish is, that's really dramatic, and we get real impressed with that. But I will tell you, fire comes out of your mouth too. Because if you tell somebody that they're going to hell, ministry of the keys, does that have power? When you say, when you reject the saving work of Jesus Christ, when you say you don't need that, and you are going to burn in hell. It is in a very real way, fire comes out of your mouth. The message of eternal damnation, that fire that never is quenched. He goes on to, I think, remind us also of the Bible stories about the power of witnesses, power to shut up the sky. You know, Elijah with the after he for 3.5 years, right? You have water turn to blood, that would be. By the way, you always do Moses and?
Aaron.
Okay, good guys. Not bad guys. Moses and? Aaron. Elijah and? Elisha. Joshua and? Caleb. Paul and? Paul and Silas. Paul and Barnabas, I heard too. Is that says God often, doesn't it seem like? Luther and? Isn't that interesting how often he sends a couple of people? Sometimes more. We have Armsdorf, Dr. Armsdorf. We got, Spalaton who does his part and stuff. God will, even if it looks really bad, guys, I don't know what the world's going to be like. I'm honestly closer to death than almost everybody in this classroom. I'm going to see God sooner than you, I think. But I don't know how bad it's going to get. Will America turn? Will there be Christian persecution in future America? I don't know.
It is.
Yeah, there is. Just in some real sense, yes. It doesn't make any difference because did God lay out this is what the world is going to be like. It's not heaven. We have the same problem sometimes as the disciples. God, are you going to establish your kingdom now, right? Weren't the disciples all excited to go to Jerusalem? Look at the crowds, they're shouting and stuff like that. Are you going to establish your kingdom now? I came here to die for people. We're here, we've been left here to witness to people, to be messengers, to be lights. All right. And then this is the sad part that I'm sure we're going to get to before we end. And that is, he talks about these two witnesses, he talks about them being killed, he talks about it taking place in the great city. And he defines the great city as the holy city, and then he defines it as the place where our Lord was crucified. Now, if you're going to read this section literally, which you always, by the way, if you're confused about a section of Revelation, read it as if it's literal, and then read it as if it's figurative. And usually jump off the page which one it is. Okay? Then he calls the place great city, holy city, Sodom, Egypt, and the place where our Lord was crucified. Which is kind of hard to do if you do Jerusalem. But if you look at it as the great city is the Christian church, because he had just finished the section about measure the temple, but leave out the outer court. And then you got the house of God, but not the house of God is not all controlled by believers. There's also unbelievers in it. And then we got the visible church with unbelievers, but we got the invisible church, which is just believers. And where do you get your big opposition from? Yes, from the church. Great city is the visible church. Jesus said, the Bible says he came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. And he described the church as Sodom, and usually we think about Sodom as an immoral place, right? We think of Egypt as an oppressive place. Has the church become immoral and oppressive? At Luther's time, I'll just do the oppressive. You do realize in 1229 they made it, they forbade any lay person from having a copy of the Bible. In 1408 they decreed nobody can make a translation unless we approve it and say it's okay. Which, by the way, several people asked me about. Wycliffe, who made a translation, they couldn't quite convict him because the law hadn't been in effect before that. So they made the law after he died, and then they got upset and they tried him after he was dead. Which, by the way, when the guy is dead, you get a conviction a lot easier. And then they dug up his bones and burned him as a warning. Don't you dare translate the Bible. That's the damn thing to do. Tyndale, who studied under Luther, he went and translated the Bible and burned him too. Is, will you get opposition? You would have immorality of the church today with the sex scandals of Catholic priests. It doesn't even occur in the Lutheran church as well. And ordaining gay pastors and stuff like that. And so, you've got this problem. I apologize. I made it through 3/5 of my presentation, so I hope at least there's something worthwhile. But I wanted to talk about one more thing, and I will make sure we end by 6 o'clock. Do you know what Luther's first hymn was? I mean, nobody knows exactly for sure, but when you read and you get, most historians agree on one of his hymns being the first one. Nobody? Well, it is the one that eventually appears in English as "Flung to the Heedless Winds," which we threw out when we did the last hymnal revision, we threw it out because nobody sang it. In fact, I mentioned to my older brother, who's 10 years older, and I mentioned "Flung to the Heedless Winds," and he says, "I don't remember singing that hymn." Which is, I think, why they canned it from the hymn book, because nobody was saying it. It actually appeared in 1524, and it was the hymn that was the very first hymn that Luther wrote was to commemorate the first Lutheran martyrs. A whole Augustinian monastery in Antwerp became Lutheran. They read Luther's writings, they read the Bible, they said, "This is right." Catholic Church descended on them, and they said, "That's not right, you can't do this, take it back, or we're going to kill you. We'll turn you over to the government's going to kill you." And eventually they put the screws to them that all but 3 said, "Okay, I take it back." And 3 of the guys said, "No, that's not the way it is. I don't want to die, but that's the truth. I'm not going to sign a paper that says that was a lie. That's the truth." So it got to the day, by the way, this month commemorates it. It happened in July. Let's take that for you. July 1st. They were going to execute the 3, and one of them said, just before the execution, he said, "This is pretty serious stuff. Can I have 4 more days to study the Bible and study what's being said here?" And they said, "Sure, but we're not going to delay the execution. The other 2 aren't going to, even think about recanting, so we're going to execute them." And so they executed those 2. The 3rd guy, at the end of 4 days, he said, "No, I can't take it back because that's what the Bible teaches." So they let him in prison until he died. So he just stayed in prison until he died. And Luther, when he heard about this whole affair, he wrote a hymn, 12 verses long. We don't publish hymns anymore, right? 12 verse hymns.
Shame.
Yeah, it is a shame.
There's all this blank white space on the pages too.
Yeah.
And I think, I know that hymn in TLH had 8 verses. Where are the other 4?
I would agree. It's kind
Doesn't make any
of
sense.
my favorite Luther
8
hymn.
is not expensive.
That's right. And another piece of paper is no big deal. My favorite hymn is "Do Christians Will Now Rejoice." It's got the whole message of salvation, but almost nobody sings it unless they're going to sing it for communion now. And it's so cool because it always points back to God doing it, and He's the one who gets the victory. Anyway, I came across this result. It was interesting. Because for some reason the charges against them were not read aloud, as was the established practice. It was been conjectured. Somebody's making this up. They're trying to make it up logically. Why would they read them? Is that hearing the charges might cause Lutheran ideas to spread among the public. Who kills monks? The Catholic Church. 1,400 years before Luther did God say this is where a big problem is going to come from, is from the church. Happened for Jesus. Who demands Jesus' execution? The high priest. I only got through 3 of the problems. punishments of false doctrine because we rejected God and He sends a delusion. The messages from hell to come, the sinful ideas of people that cause people's death. The last two would have been government, which is used in Satan's service, which, by the way, did one of the famous events in Luther's life is standing not before the Pope, but standing before the emperor who does want to kill him. And then the last one is the Antichrist. And I try to stay away from the Antichrist because I assume you're going to get a really neat presentation at the end of the week, the Antichrist, and God has said this is all going to happen. By the way, if you look at your outline, what happens to the Antichrist? He's toast at the end. God said, I'm taking care of the Antichrist, I'm taking care of Satan, and then we all go to heaven. And although we'd like things to be nice, yes, heaven is our home, and we can have fun because do we know the truth? Can anybody take away from us the truth of God's word? And will anybody ever bring us stuff out? One of the models of the Reformation is, you see that on your website, right? What are the letters? B, D, and A. And A, which is? Yes, that's really impressive, thank you. The Word of God endures forever. Frederick the Wise had it printed on the right sleeves of everybody who worked in his court. I was going to show you. He even had put it on the heads of his horses. Well, not the heads of the horses. They put helmets on in warfare, so they put the helmet on and they stamped that on your war horse. Because what is going to come for Lutherans? Are they going to have to fight? And live or die, they know that the word of the Lord endures forever. And guys, that is the coolest thing. We all know how it turns out. Don't get depressed. It's a little sad in the meantime. Thank you for your attention and enjoy your supper. Oh, I'm sorry. What am I doing? I don't know if I announced it at the beginning. I will have it put up so you can access any of the slides online.